Hello everyone, and today I shall be discussing the T14. But before that, I have an announcement. I've now established a Discord server where you guys can talk directly to me instead of having to go through the YouTube comment section, which I can't always see your comments because YouTube deletes them, and I can't always reply. You can also give me feedback and video requests in the channel, and I have areas set up for history, military, and political discussion. So if you guys are kind of interested in that, I would say it is worth checking out. Anyway, back to the video. Now, the T14 Armada has been on the receiving end of a lot of controversy in the last few years, with initially being touted as a new cutting-edge tank that would destroy all Western vehicles and completely rewrite the rules of combat. And now it's turned into a situation where it is being put on hold due to the massive costs of the program. So what's led to the situation? What went so horribly wrong that a vehicle with so much reputation, so much propaganda around it just got cancelled by Russia? Well, there are several reasons. However, first I must explain to you why it's so important to the Russians. About 4 billion years ago, Earth was in its cooling phase, and microbes were beginning to flourish. These microbes would eventually populate a magical place called Russia and support collectivization, communist ideology, and excessive vodka drinking. Obviously, this is all complete bullshit. Let's continue. The nation of Russia, and later the USSR, would become a major powerhouse regarding tank production, and would create many armoured vehicles ranging across various types. However, for the sake of the video not going to the 10-hour mark, I shall solely discuss Russian or Soviet main battle tanks, or MBTs for short. They would produce 5 main MBTs, which would receive countless upgrades and modifications over their existence. Many of these vehicles are still operated today. These vehicles are the T55, 62, 72, 80, and finally the T90. Each of these vehicles use concepts and lessons learned from the previous one. However, with these vehicles, a single major issue would arise. The vehicles have too many common parts. This goes simply beyond sharing pieces of equipment such as tracks or engine parts or perhaps electronics. This went to the extent of having the same chassis, the same autoloader, the same sight systems, etc. This means that whilst the vehicles do improve from the last model, there are limits to which they can continue modifying it, with one such example being that a limited number of Russian tanks can operate their latest anti-tank munitions, whilst pretty much all modern Western tanks can operate any munition they really want. Other problems include, but are not limited to, the vehicles having low reverse speeds, unlike for the French tanks. Yes, please laugh about the French joke in the comment section below. The carousel autoloaders, which can be easily hit and lead to a catastrophic detonation of the vehicle's magazine, which will kill the crew, and this leads to a lower survivability rate for both the vehicle and the crew. Whereas Western tanks, on the other hand, have blowout panels, and they can generally survive an ammunition detonation. The tanks are also underpowered in comparison to lots of modern Western vehicles. For example, the Challenger 2, which is much heavier, about 18 tons heavier than a T90, will still operate at the same speeds as the T90. All these problems lead to the use of the T14 and why it's so important for Russia. It is so much more survivable. It has better active protection system, has blowout panels, and an automated turret, which provides more protection for the crew if the ammunition detonates. It also has a focus on crew comfort for once, with air conditioning, a quieter engine, and a toilet for the crew, which I don't think any tanks have those. The vehicle is also supposedly capable of moving at 82 kilometers an hour, which makes it much more mobile than many modern Western tanks, alongside being capable of carrying Russia's cutting-edge anti-tank shells, which supposedly burn through their target's armor. All these factors make the T14 quite a formidable vehicle in theory, that would be more than capable of handling or taking out any modern Western tanks that they come across. So why has Russia put it on hold? The answer is simple: expense and lack of production. The T14 is an expensive vehicle, as it is a modern main battle tank. It means that it is a fundamental shift from the current vehicles that the Russians currently operate, which are several decades old. The Russians are used to operating a large number of older, less advanced tanks, which they have built their military around since World War II, and an expensive vehicle means you simply cannot build as many of them, which creates a problem for Russia, which is famous for its massive military that focuses on quantity rather than quality. The issue is only exacerbated as purchasing new T14s only drives up the price. This is due to the fact that many features on board the tank are not built in Russia. Yes, that's right. They are reliant upon Western nations to provide the equipment. And an example of this is the thermal systems, which has received a lot of controversy and a lot of big spotlight from the West, particularly with the war in Ukraine. The thermal system is produced by France and a few other European nations. However, due to sanctions, these assets will not be sold to Russia directly, requiring Russia to buy the systems through third parties, which drives up the cost. And the thing is, these assets may not be having the same quantity, the same quality, and delivery times may be much, much higher. And of course, due to the simple concept of supply and demand, Russia will be forced to buy a higher number of these assets with each T14 produced, which will lead to an inevitable cycle of the vehicle's cost going up, which forces Russia to keep the vehicle produced on a small scale. But as is usual for the Russians, the problems don't stop there. The T14 is a modern tank, which has been built around an entirely different doctrine and tactics to any of their previous tanks. It has never seen active combat, meaning that they will need to develop a whole set of doctrine, whole new set of tactics to operate the vehicle reliably. An example of this was the BMP-T Terminator, which despite being quite a good vehicle on paper, failed due to the poor tactics being used alongside the vehicle not being capable of getting deployed in high numbers. These factors have led to the Russian government effectively cancelling the project, with the official claims that the vehicle is simply too expensive. Now, I will obviously get some commenters saying something along the lines of, oh, but the project's only been paused, not cancelled. Now, the big problem with this argument is that the issues with the T14 won't go away. The T14 will be just as expensive. The Russians won't have the relevant doctrine to make the most of the tank, and there won't be enough of it to make any sort of significant impact on a battlefield. Not only that, but this is Russia. They won't tell you that the T14's been cancelled because that would make them seem weak or incapable of delivering. What will most likely happen is they'll go silent on their project for several years before unveiling their next new wonder weapon that will be even better than T14 and truly put the fear into the hearts of those evil Westerners who come across it. This has led to a fair bit of speculation that perhaps the next Russian tank could be designated the T-34, after their famous World War II medium tank. With all these points in mind, it is important to remember that the T-14 is still a very real vehicle, with anywhere from 12 to 14 of the vehicles being in service in Russia. This means that Russia has about one armoured combat unit in service that can actually operate it. So how would they use it? The answer is most likely as a last resort type asset. The T-14 isn't produced on a large enough scale to have any significant outcome on the battlefield. However, it would be useful for reacting to breakthroughs by hostile threats, and more likely a final defense of Moscow or the Kremlin, in the case that either NATO spearheaded an attack or a coup threatens the place. Somewhat ironically meaning that the one time the T-14 may actually have had the opportunity to show its capabilities was when Prigozhin attempted to march on Moscow in his short-lived coup. Now, all that being said, the T-14 is an improvement from the previous generation tanks. However, it's nothing special regarding its capabilities and technologies on board. There is also little to no evidence that it can actually even do the things that the Russians claim, which simply harms the arguments for having the vehicle in service. In order to stop this video from going to the 10-hour mark due to my incoherent waffling, I'll finish the video with this. The T-14 is too expensive to mass produce as it is reliant upon Western technologies and systems which cannot be produced in Russia. It lacks any form of significant numbers, which means it cannot make any major impact on the battlefield, and the T-14 requires the development of new tactics and doctrine regarding its deployment. And there is no evidence to back up the extremely bold Russian claims that it will outperform Western tanks by any major margin, with the vehicle being at best on par with or marginally more capable than most modern Western tanks. These factors have led to the vehicle being scrapped by the Russian government, or at the very least put on hold for an extended period of time. This means that the vehicle has failed its fundamental job as a next-generation Russian main battle tank, and they will continue to operate vehicles designed over 50 years ago as their main battlefield assets, whilst the West is developing truly next-generation tanks which integrate emerging technologies along with increased lethality and capabilities. I thank you all very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's greatly appreciated. It really helps my content get seen and it helps grow the channel. Once more, I thank you so very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Goodbye.